G'day legends, I hope that you are having a fantastic day. Now, I had the MRI for my brain tumour this morning. Now, I won't know the results for at least a couple of weeks as I'm waiting for an appointment with my neurosurgeon, and there's a few things happening in the next couple of days, week or so, so just going to get pushed out. But as soon as I know the results, I'll post them up in its own video, and a lot of the time I do the audio from the surgeon so you can actually hear exactly what they have said as well. So I know there's some people interested in that. But today, as normal, we're going to go over the news of the day in Ukraine. We're going to look at the maps and talk about a few other little bits and pieces. Now, the big news of the day is that we've had confirmation that Russia has suffered its biggest air loss so far in this conflict, with the confirmation that an A-50 AWACS aircraft has been destroyed and an Il-22 airborne command center has at least been very badly damaged. Now, we spoke about yesterday how this was speculated, but now it has come out and it's been confirmed through both Russian and Ukrainian sources, which is what we like. You know, in this war, we know that information is as useful weapon, or can even be more useful than a weapon on the front line. So, you know, the informational space is one thing, but we get that confirmation across and we can go, yep, this has likely happened. Now, in the case of this, let's go over this. So this came up from the defense of Ukraine this morning. The Ukrainian Air Forces destroyed the enemy A-50 long-range radar detection and control aircraft worth 330 million and the Il-22 enemy air control center. Now, the 330 million figure is probably a sticker price, insurance price for this. I've seen people throwing $500 million figures out there. And the Il-22, we're not too sure yet on the extent of the damage. Now, a lot of YouTubers, a lot of Twitter people, a lot of whatever, turn out they must have a side job as an aeronautical engineer. From the photograph we have, which is this one here, I don't think too many of us can say how severe the damage actually is. That said, a tungsten ball going up through the bloody fuselage like that can't be bloody great for the aircraft or the crew inside. Now, this aircraft here, this is the most important one, at least for material that has gone down. Now, Russia has about 10 of these, and the numbers I see range from 8 to 15, but 10 seems to be around the most common. So this is a big loss. This could be 10% of this specific capability was then lost in a day. The other one is still very important. There are more of those aircraft, but the command center. Now, this A-50 has a crew of up to 15 or 16, depending on the mission profiling at the time. So let's then have a look, I guess, a little bit more in depth on some of this. And we're going to be looking at some stuff from Fighter Bomber. Firstly, then posted up this, the Il-22. If we say the Il-22 crew are real heroes, it means to say nothing. I hope we hear their story from first person. Now, this plane was hit and then has managed to actually land back in Russia. Now, this came out through a page as well. There was a rumor that Ivanov, better known as the fighter bomber, was on board the A-50. We hope that he will soon get in touch and deny the report. And that is then from this, the original here. And then this is what he responded to this. A tragedy is always a tragedy, especially when it's of this scale. Whoever is there, we most likely will not know who is to blame for the death of the pilots. To the dead of eternal flight, to the wounded, a speedy recovery and return to duty. And ask for specifics from the Moscow region and from the administrators of stupid channels who consider themselves real patriots of the country and know exactly what can be written and what cannot. Well, yes, it's probably still worth trying to return to the roots when tankers were commanded by tankers, pilots were commanded by pilots, and anti-aircraft gunners were commanded by anti-aircraft gunners. It definitely won't get any worse. So calling out how the command structure is actually operating and working there as well. And this is not an uncommon theme to have a lot of issues in these structures. Now, we're going to talk, I guess, in this at length, but Army Chief Valery Zaluzny said on his Telegram, Ukraine's Air Force destroyed an enemy A-50 long-range radar detection aircraft and an enemy Il-22 air control center. I'm grateful to the Air Force for this perfectly planned and executed operation in the Azov Sea region. Now, let's talk about this and where the speculation really lies on whether it was Ukrainian air defense that engaged or that it was a friendly fire instant. Now, one thing we will say is, regardless of either of this, these aircraft have been lost, and it is a huge loss for the Russian forces. That said, Russia still has somewhere in the vicinity of a minimum of 8 to 15 max, depending on the maintenance of these. So it's not like that capability is gone, but it is a large loss. So why are people saying that it may be a friendly fire incident over the Ukrainian air defense hitting it? Well, it's mainly that it took place in here. Now, this is the Sea of Azov. Now, people are saying that it was a Ukrainian Patriot PAC-2 missile. These missiles have a range of about 160 kilometers, which means if it was a Patriot, Ukraine is putting its Patriots into more high-risk position to engage aircraft over the Sea of Azov and more down in this southern region, showing that they've got now more dominance down here. But in having that more dominance, it's putting those very expensive, limited systems at more risk. So let's just have a look. Let's go with the 160 kilometer figure. Now, of course, these figures are very classified. So let's just go here. Let's drop a pin somewhere down into the Sea of Azov, and then look at where, you know, the 160 Ks is. So wherever you are, even right out here, the 160 is still placing these systems very, very close to the front line. They are closer to here, the more danger that these systems are in. And people have said, would they do that? Now, if this is a friendly fire incident, like some of the more pro-Russian channels will say, this is a huge embarrassment to actually be able to take down two of these incredibly important planes. Now, a lot of people saying the Il-22 was friendly fire, the A-50 was engaged, so I guess there's the third bloody pick your own fucking option in there as well. But we also need to say that there are AMRAAM missiles that are compatible with the F-16 that can engage out to this distance. And I wouldn't be surprised if with some of the bloody targeting we've seen over the past couple of weeks, that there are these F-16s in country, but Ukraine's keeping it very, very quiet to not try and have Russia really know about this and then try and target where specifically these planes are. Zaluzny also posted this up with his Telegram post. So we'll see these aircraft then disappear on here. This one disappear here. And then the second one blew in here. Now, we do know that the Il-22 most likely made it back. But it is important for Ukraine to capitalize on this news, to also show their ability to strike on these higher value targets as this war draws on, as the front line slows down and more questions about funding rise. So it's an interesting thing. The true answer of this, we'll probably never know. But I do find it interesting that people would rather it be a friendly fire incident than your opponent be able to take down that plane. If it was an Australian plane, I'd probably rather my adversary have engaged and go, well, that's part of war, than show incompetence in my own force hitting that, if that makes sense. But it is a very large loss. Now, Vadim Skibitsky, a representative of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense, in an interview with RBC Ukraine, has stated that every day 1,000 to 1,100 Russians are recruited into the armed forces, either by volunteering or are conscripted in, which is meeting, if these figures are true, is meeting the replacement rate needed to still bolster and increase the Russian armed forces amount of soldiers. But in this, the level of training, the cost, this all comes into actually mobilizing guys, whether volunteers, conscripts, to actually get them to a standard to have a reasonable effect on the front line. But this is one thing we know is in Russia's favor, is just sheer amount of people. The Ukraine's foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, has warned that time is running out for Congress to pass the funding that has been stuck since before the new year in the US, with it having an obvious effect now on ammunition stocks at the front line, particularly for artillery. He stated, whatever the price of supporting Ukraine is now, the price of fixing the mess in the world if Ukraine loses will be much higher. And he's referring to this message that we have been hearing from many officials, mainly including President Biden from the US, that if Ukraine is not funded, then it will be NATO soldiers eventually fighting against Russia, and this would be far more expensive. Now, whether this is a realistic scenario, I guess, is up for debate, with Russia saying they have no ambitions to strike directly into NATO, and Republican senators accusing this messaging as blackmailing the public for more support. But if Russia does have a victory over Ukraine, I believe the more realistic issue is going to be the message that it's sending to other powerful adversaries around the world, and how will then other countries look at the West's security guarantees, and maybe these countries go, well, then we have the ability to continue land grabbing. Though Kuleva has also stated that Ukraine will not stop fighting Russia regardless of support, saying even if we run out of weapons, we will fight with shovels. Ukraine continues discussing its 10-point peace plan at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Now, Andriy Yermak, the Ukrainian president's chief of staff, has stated, countries from the global south are increasingly getting involved in our work. It shows understanding that this European conflict is in fact a challenge for all humanity. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has commented on these plans, saying, this is simply talking for the sake of talking. This process cannot be aimed at achieving any specific results for the obvious reason. We, meaning Russia, are not participating. Without our participation, any discussions are devoid of any prospect of any results. Now, there's also a lot of speculation around Ukraine discussing peace negotiations and land concessions in Davos, but Ukraine's presidential chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, has denied any of this, saying, I've participated in nearly all high-level meetings, including leadership meetings, and I have never heard any of Ukraine's partners or friends discuss compromises regarding Crimea, which they know are unacceptable to Ukraine. But without Russia involved in any of this discussion, it is just building that support of the peace plan to put it in. But with these peace plans, with any negotiations, Russia will eventually have to be involved somewhere if it's not defeated out of Ukraine militarily. Now, the peace plan at the moment is to gain as much support from around the world as possible for more money going into Ukraine, more security guarantees, all of this. But Ukraine still will need to clear completely out of their border if they won't involve Russia at all in these negotiation process. So I guess we'll see how that unfolds over the next coming months, years. This could be a very long time. So there are very little updates on the map. So of course we have Ukraine here in the center, the capital of Kyiv. The red area is occupied since 22 and the purple since 14. Of course, this being the Sea of Azov, this being Russia around here. If we zoom into here, just above Bakhmut, near Seversk here, near Bilorivka, we know Russia is pushing very hard into here. That if we see from yesterday till today, we see a small bit of ground made here through then this paddock up to this road on the outskirts of Bilorivka just here. But that is the only map update we have. This is just south of the Kreminna forest here. But then we do have a war mapper update. We don't have any Surak map for today. So Verbove, we're talking, is down near Robitny to the south of Kyiv, where Ukraine had its most success in its counteroffensive. So Verbove just here, and is showing that Russia made some ground out to the west from Verbove and has occupied a bit more there. We'd heard Surak talk about this in the last couple of days, and Russia is trying to close back up these gaps. The reason in and around here will be so important for Russia is if we bring up then the fortifications, they're trying to recapture a lot of the fortifications they built for, bring that up back up, they built for Ukraine's 2023 offensive, recapture these, because we know then that layered defense actually did work. So if they can close that back up before Ukraine goes back on the defensive posture, it will be beneficial for them. And as well, we have up near Avdiivka, out near the train line here, also saying that Russia has got a little bit more ground out to the west. We do know if we go up to that train line, that is where Russia has been pushing very hard. So we see where this train line spits off. Of course, with those two maps, you can't actually really line them up, but they are trying to get more control out along this train line to force, this squeeze down on Avdiivka's flanks. And there is some small amount of high ground up in the northwest of Avdiivka in here, as well as the tactical strategic asset of actually these train lines. But legends, that is all that I have for you today. I hope that you are having a great day. If you'd like to support me, links down below. This one's a lot shorter, wasn't that heavy of a news day, but look after yourselves and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye-bye.